All right. Good afternoon. Good morning. My name is Erin Myers. I am the Director of Environment, Climate Change, and Emergency Management for the Métis National Council. I have the privilege today of being the moderator for our second kitchen table talk, which happens to be on Valentine's Day, a day where we get to come together and learn. And in a time where we need love more than anything, what a great day to join and talk about our love for the land and water and skies and plants and all of our relations on the land. Um, Before we get into things, I just wanted to let everybody know just some housekeeping rules or just some information around housekeeping is that viewers can select their language interpretation preference from the drop-down menu just above the video at the top left. You can choose from no interpretation or English slash ASL or French slash LSQ. If you'd like to ask questions, and I really hope that you do, there's going to be a Q&A tool added just below the video screen where viewers can submit questions to the panel, and these questions will be collected and hopefully, time permitting, will be able to be answered by our excellent speakers that we have with us today. Viewers can also choose their preferred language for this tool from the person/profile icon at the top right corner of the blue menu and select My Profile and then your language. And as we start, we always want to start in a good way today. And I just want to introduce Grandmother Kathy, who's going to open and do an opening prayer for us today.
Thank you, Erin. My name is Kathy Boston. I am from, oh my goodness, I'm tired today. So let me get this introduction started again. Good day, everyone. My name is Kathy Boston. I was born over 900 moons ago in Fort McMurray, Alberta. I come from a lineage of Savard, Desjardins, Cardinal, Logans, Powder, Lapoudre, and it goes on and on. So I have been married for over 30 years. We have 5 daughters, 9 grandchildren, and I've been doing work with the Métis National Council for a couple of years now, and I am so proud of all the work that this council has been doing over the years on a global as well as within our own country. And if I don't get into this prayer right now, I'm going to ramble. So let us offer prayers to our sacred grandmothers. Sacred grandmothers from the north, the east, the south, and the west, with humble hearts we offer you our prayers today. We are grateful for the guidance and wisdom of our sacred grandmothers, for Grandmother Moon as she guides our waters and gives strength and energy to woman. We give thanks for our grandfather Sun as he provides light, warmth, and growth to all of creation. And we are thankful for Mother Earth and her daily gifts, the air that we breathe, the waters that give us life, the lands upon which we live, the plants that heal us, and the plants that provide nutrition for us. We are blessed for the connection we have with our natural family and are honored to share this earth with our air, land, and water friends. Let us be thankful for our families, our friends, our communities, and the animal friends we share our homes with. Sacred grandmothers, we ask for your blessings and your wisdom today and guide us in a good way to move today's agenda forward with kindness and respect for each other's views and opinions. We ask you to guide us with honesty and open minds as we advocate for the protection of our natural family. Today, let us hold in our thoughts and prayers the Vancouver Island marmot. The Vancouver Island marmot is Canada's most endangered Indigenous mammal and one of the rarest mammals in the world. Conservation, breeding, and reintroduction programs have given this species a fighting chance. Still, it continues to teeter on the brink of extinction. May our sacred grandmothers surround the Vancouver Island marmot with love and protection, and let us pray their population continues to grow and they have good health. In the spirit of our sacred grandmothers, Hi, Marcy, Miigwech, thank you for hearing our prayers today. The end.
Thank you so much, Grandmother. We really appreciate you being here. And it's always just an honor for you to start us off in a good way. So thank you very much for being here. As mentioned, my name is Erin Myers. I'm the Director of Environment, Climate Change, and Emergency Management with the Métis National Council. I've been with the Métis National Council for over 5.5 years, and it's been a real honor for me to do so and be an ally and advocate for the Métis Nation. Presently, I'm living and raising my two beautiful boys on unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin territory just west of Ottawa. And it's a real honor for me to be here with all of you today. For several years, the Métis National Council and Parks Canada have collaborated to nurture strong relationships together by maintaining a collaborative partnership at the national level. In 2022, the MNC hosted a virtual gathering where our governing members provided valuable insights into the MNC and Parks Canada and how we can improve our working relationship together and how we can extend those bridges, that kinship, that partnership, so that we can achieve the values of protecting and stewarding lands and waters in a good way. One of the key recommendations from the gathering was for the MNC to work with Parks Canada to ensure that staff had educational opportunities to learn more about the Métis Nation, including stories from the land and the cultural ties to that land and water. The concept of the kitchen table talk is inspired by teachings from knowledge keeper Sharon Morin and others, who taught us that the kitchen table is a central discussion forum for Métis families and communities. I know that in my home, whenever we gather, we always end up in the kitchen chit-chatting and telling stories and eating good food. And so it's really appropriate that, you know, in order to share space, in order to learn from one another, sitting around the kitchen table is one of the best places to do that. We began this series in 2023, and I hope some of that you were able to be a part of the first kitchen table talk, which, and if you weren't, it's available on our YouTube page, on our MNC YouTube channel. And we're very excited to be hosting the second one because we heard the first one went really well. And I just want to take this opportunity to recognize Kelsey Scarfone, who's my lead on conservation and who holds that relationship of building strong alliances with Parks Canada and who couldn't be here today. So I'm kind of stepping into those big, beautiful shoes of hers. And I hope I can do her proud in this space because this is kind of her vision with our knowledge keepers' visions to be able to have these conversations. And of course, it's Valentine's Day. And in a time where we need much love and compassion and humanity as possible, what better time to talk about our love for the land, the water, the air, the plants, the medicines, and the Métis Nation, and how the Métis Nation is working diligently to be good stewards of those lands, those waters, and to build kinship with the four-legged, those that swim, and those that are all around us in the ecosystems that we share. So we are really excited about having this dialogue today. We're really excited about hosting this dialogue on Valentine's Day. And we all know that Valentine's Day is every day. You know, it's not just today, but I think recognizing that to love one another and to love the land around us is only going to get us into better places. And I'm wearing these strawberry earrings today from an incredible beater out in Saskatchewan because the strawberry is the heartberry. And it's a good reminder of the work that we have to do together in partnership and the love that we have to have for one another to be able to work in that partnership. So happy to be here and co-hosting with Parks Canada. Really happy that you're all taking your lunch hour or your morning or your afternoon to be with us today. And with that, I'm going to get right to it and jump into it with our incredible panelists today that I have the honor of spending time with. And the panelists are going to speak for a couple of minutes after they present themselves, and then we're hoping to have some time for questions from you. So please feel open. It's a safe space, and we really want to hear from you about how we can better do this work together. And also just any question that you might have, we're really excited to be able to answer that, hopefully, for you. So like I said, I'm very lucky to have a wonderful lineup of speakers today. Grandmother Kathy Boston from Winnipeg, who opened us up in a really good way. We have Bernadine Holland from Alberta and Steve Jaws from Boateng, also known as Sault Ste. Marie. And they do have bios that we've shared on the event's website that I'm hoping that you've been able to check out. And you can see how incredible and impressive these folks are around this kitchen table today. But I would like to just allow them to introduce themselves quickly, and so you get to know them a lot better. So Grandmother Kathy, I'll pass it to you, and then over to Bernadine, and then over to you, Steve.
Okay, I've told you a little bit about myself already. I'll tell you a little bit about the work that I do. I am on the committee for the Indigenous Land Stewardship Program, or Circle, I'm sorry. And I'm also on the National Advisory Council of Canada, representing the Métis National Council for the Knowledge Circle for Indigenous Inclusion, and also the old one on the Strawberry Moon Table. And I'm just going to briefly tell you why I refer to myself as an old woman. An old woman is Niti. Sorry, I can't talk today. But anyway, the lesson I'm going to tell you is that many moons ago, our people were not called elders. Elders came in many forms in different Christian religions, and it is a colonial word. So traditionally, we were called the old ones. And I am very, very proud to be an old woman because not a lot of people get to this point, right? So, what else can I tell you? I guess we'll just make that short because I'm still kind of tired. And I hope you enjoyed that little lesson. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Grandmother. And just so folks know, Grandmother just came back from Ottawa. We hosted a global summit the last 2 days here in Ottawa. So she got home very late last night. And don't worry about it, Grandmother Kathy. Anything you have to share is great insight and inspiration for all of us. So just thanks for being here. Over to you, Bernadine, for your introduction.
Well, Tansy Kyo, wow, merci. Hello, everyone, and thank you. I am very honored to be here today. I'm also grateful to be joining you from Calgary, also known as Mohkinstsis, in the language of the Blackfoot, the place where the Elbow and the Bow Rivers meet. This is home to the folks of the Kainai, the Piikani, the Siksani, the Siksika, the Amsak, Amskapi Piikani First Nations of the Blackfoot Confederacy, also the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations, who together form the Ayathka Nakota First Nations and the Tsuut'ina First Nations of the Great Dene Nation. This is also home, and I'm very honored to say that this is home to the Métis Otipemisiwak people of Battle River Territory. So I'm honored to come here today because this actually is kind of a full circle for me because Parks Canada holds a very special place in my heart. At the age of 16, and you can tell that's quite a while ago now, I was a participant in what was called Parks Canada's Conservation Corps. If you'll bear with me, I have a little bit of a piece that I wrote to speak today because I wanted to sort of share how that has influenced my life. So the Conservation Corps, as some of you might know, was a summer program that engaged youth from across Canada in a work, live, learn situation. It was to gain experience in many aspects of National Park Service. We worked with camp and backcountry trail maintenance crews, delivered conservation education programs with naturalists, collected data for scientists, learned skills in backcountry rescue and firefighting, and even gained insight into the Warden Service. It was an incredible experience that I believe was foundational to what my life journey would become. It profoundly influenced what I would choose for my academic studies, career path, and personal interests in wildlife, native plant species, outdoor activities, art, and music. And having spent countless weekends camping and fishing along the banks of the rivers, lakes, and streams in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and a little bit in Manitoba under the guidance of my Métis father, I know it was during those formative years that my love and respect for Aski, Mother Earth, the land, and our animal and plant relations took root. But looking back, I believe it was that glorious summer in Waterton Lakes National Park that solidified my passion for wildlife and nature conservation. As far as holding knowledge from the land, wildlife, and plants, to be honest, I cannot pinpoint when acquiring traditional Métis knowledge ended and Western science began. In truth, I don't believe it ever has ended, and I hope that it won't until the day I die. Perhaps this is traditional. For what I can say about Métis is that knowing is really about paying attention and continual learning. You've probably heard of people speak of two-eyed seeing, where looking at through two lenses, the Western view of science and the Indigenous ways of knowing. And I really respect that. But I can be honest and say that I've always kind of seen myself as what I would call a hybridized person. And I know that some people don't like that term, but I really feel that is my truth. And maybe it's because we Métis, after all, were born of two people, of Indigenous people and European people. And so What I can say is that many plants and animals I first encountered through traditional uses, I later met again in botanical studies and scientific literature. I met them again. And I would say this hybrid perspective strongly influenced my life choices. And this really kind of came home when my husband and I decided to create a naturalized backyard, where we planted only native trees and shrubs and flowering plants that many of them have traditional uses in terms of medicines and foods, but also just mostly for wildlife and for wildlife. So from this blended perspective, I would say I've always assumed the role of a student. In my experience of planting and tending this small urban forest, Mother Nature has really been my constant teacher. She has taught me the rhythms of seasons, the cycles of abundance and rest, and the succession of plant life. For example, as the trees matured, certain flowering plants like the wood lily, the firewood, ceased blooming, waiting patiently for the canopy to open again. Both vulnerability and resilience are other lessons the tiny forest has imparted on me. Because native species, although they can tolerate drought to a certain degree and climate shifts, we must remember that even they have trouble struggling against some really major events. For example, in 2020, a severe hailstorm with 80-kilometer winds and golf ball to tennis ball size hailstones devastated Northeast Calgary. And while our home sustained minimal damage, the trees bore the brunt of the storm. And we basically looked to the backyard and it looked like tossed salad with branches strewn everywhere. We did lose our beloved staghorn sumac, and it was an older tree with shallow roots. But despite its loss, the forest really did endure, and she taught us the power of adaptation and perseverance. I can say this effort has brought immense joy and inspiration, even influencing my artistic pursuits. I've witnessed firsthand how nature provides, adapts, and responds, however response may be the operative word here. For there is no doubt that the tiny forest has also served as a microcosm, a window into the declining bird populations. And this is a trend that has become especially noticeable in the last 5 years. Creating this forest has not only been a personal journey, but it has been a testament to the importance of conservation. Nature is resilient, but she needs our help. By restoring habitats, planting native species, and reducing our impact, we can support biodiversity and ensure future generations will experience the beauty and wisdom that nature has to offer. On a final note of introduction, I did want to mention that during my time as a wildlife rehabilitator, I saw the direct impact of human activities on wild animals, whether through vehicle collisions, toxins, habitat destruction, or well-meaning people that have kidnapped little animals thinking they were orphaned. And as a zookeeper and a wildlife researcher, which, by the way, included the Vancouver Island marmot, working with critically endangered species, I learned that the key to survival is not just conservation efforts after species have already ended up on endangered species lists, but really the key to preservation and restoration is restoring the natural habitats. This will help to prevent species from ending up endangered to begin with. As a person said to hold knowledge, I can say my journey, my collected life knowledge from childhood adventures in the wilderness with my Métis father to academic adventures and attaining my BSc and MSc degrees. Conservation research and wildlife care has taught me one undeniable truth. If we work in harmony with Aski, the land, our Mother Earth, we are not just her stewards, but also her students, forever learning from her quiet, enduring wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernadine, and thank you very much for being here and wanting to share your knowledge and your wisdom and your teachings and what you've seen over time with all of us here. So thank you so much, Bernadine, for being with us today. Now I'm going to pass it over to Steve. Over to you to introduce yourself.
Okay. Bonjour, Anine. Nishka Shatwa Mangan Endamat. Wabsque Mangan Doben. Wasakwa de Anishinaabe Bawating. Good afternoon, everyone. I introduced myself in one of our original languages, the Ojibwe language. And what I said was my spirit name is Sacred Wolf, and I'm of the White Wolf clan. I said it was Wasakwa de Anishinaabe, which means that we're a people that flows with the Anishinaabeg Nation here in Bawating. And where it talks about our connection to the land and who we are as a Anishinaabeg people. Bawating is the territory I'm from, also known as Sault Ste. Marie. We refer to Bawating as the heart of Turtle Island. So if you look at, you know, like a map of North America, right where the Great Lakes meet is where I'm from, but we call that the heart of Turtle Island right there. It's a very, very sacred place where we live here. So it's an honor for me to be born and live here. I also want to thank Grandma Kathy for that beautiful opening prayer. Her words were beautiful. They come from the Spirit. And what a great way to start this afternoon is with a prayer. Miigwech, Grandma Kathy. A little bit about myself personally. I'm a retired police officer. I was in the Ontario Provincial Police for 31 years, retiring in Sault Ste. Marie. During my time in the Ontario Provincial Police, I was a detective when I retired, but I also was a member of the Aboriginal Relations team. And that was a very important job. I did it part-time, but it came out of the Ipperwash Inquiry in Ontario. And one of the recommendations was that the Ontario Provincial Police set up an Aboriginal Relations team. So what we mediated, usually with First Nations and protests, and we would go in, you know, to speak with the people involved. We didn't wear a uniform, we didn't carry firearms, but we'd sit in circles with the elders, chief and councils, and we'd mediate between them and the leadership of the Ontario Provincial Police. And the main function or the goal of that was to come to a resolution of, you know, what was going on in a peaceful way, that no one would get hurt. And I can say myself, you know, from the time I was in that role, no one did get hurt. So I was very thankful for that. And it was a great teaching for me to be part of that. I previously went to university. I have 2 Bachelor of Science degrees, one in natural resources, one in criminal justice. I am the president of the local historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council, as well as captain of the hunt for Region 4 of the Métis Nation, Ontario. I have 2 beautiful daughters and recently a granddaughter who's 3.5 months old. And my partner that I live with, she's been great support for me. And being today, Valentine's Day, I consider myself fortunate and thankful for her being in my life. I'm also a pipe carrier. I've been carrying a pipe for over 20 years. I am a sun dancer. I sun danced in Rosebud, South Dakota, under the altar of Leonard Crow Dog, chief sun dancer. I did, my commitment was 4 years, and I completed my commitment of the 4-year sun dance, which is it's a very beautiful ceremony, and it's very difficult, but the great importance of why I did that, which I won't get into today. I'm a lodge keeper. I have a sweat lodge. I'm also a keeper of the eagle staff, and I'm the keeper of the eagle bone whistle. These sacred items I carry aren't mine. They don't belong to me. They come from the Great Spirit, but they're for the people. And I consider myself, you know, most of my life and now to be a helper. I'm here to help people. So these sacred items I have help me to help the people. And since I retired, I've been retired for 10 years. I've been, you know, very active in the Métis Nation, you know, being captain of the hunt and on council. But I also, I go into the school board, into the schools, and I help to teach that lands-based teaching, we call it. And that's it's usually children of grade 7, grade 8. But I'm helping the teachers as well to reconnect or connect those young ones to the land. Because it's such an important age at, you know, in grade 7 and 8 that they'd be able to get that connection, get that spirituality. Because traditionally our people at that age would fast. You know, they would go out in the bush for 4 days and 4 nights, and they'd be given a vision, you know, and they'd be able to decide what they're going to do with the rest of their lives. So we have to try and help them to reconnect to Mother Earth, because that's what we're all about. We're people of the land. So very quickly, that's my introduction. I'll get back to you in a little bit about being captain of the hunt and on the land. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Steve. And I really appreciate you being here and also all the good work that you're doing, especially with the children. I think that's a really important piece that, you know, sometimes we get wrapped up in the policies and the programming, and we forget that there's little ones out there that are also being impacted. And have a lot to say about, you know, being stewards, about finding solutions and about being creative. And so thank you for your work in that space and really working with the kids. And I also liked what you had to say, and it's something that I say quite a bit, is that, you know, how did we get here? How did we get to this climate crisis we find ourselves in, or biodiversity crisis we find ourselves in. And really, you know, what I've been taught is that it's because our relationship to the land and waters is broken. That heart connection to the land and water is broken. And we had to find ways to heal that brokenness and come together and find ways to work to rebuild that relationship. And so I really appreciate you talking a little bit about relationship there, Steve, and being here today with us. I do want to get in, I have a couple of questions for our speakers today and to help start the dialogue. So Bernadine, I'm going to start with you. And you talked about all that you're doing, both professionally that you've done, you know, working in the park system, and also all the great work you're doing in your backyard. And so considering the incredible time you spent on the land, acquiring knowledge and learning from our animal and plant relatives, can you share with us what they've taught you about Métis responsibilities to our environment and our non-human kin?
Thank you for that question. Oops. Oh, I thought I was muted, sorry. I'm going to again sort of share with you a little bit of what I wrote because I thought a lot about this question in preparation for this. So I will say that spending time in the land has reinforced one is connected. Every creature, plant, river, ecosystem play a role in an ecosystem. So everything has a service. The Métis people have long understood this. I believe we have. And we also recognize at the same time that we have to be responsible and reciprocal. And if we, for example, take too much, then we upset that balance. So as someone who has spent time observing and learning from wildlife, I've seen firsthand how every species contributes to its ecosystem. Take the yellow-bellied marmot, one of the marmot species that I spent a long time with. These burrowing squirrels are not only food for predators, they are also animals that aerate the soil, they disperse seeds, they help shape the landscape. Their tunnels provide shelter for other wildlife, from rattlesnakes to pack rats. They're in certain ways the prairie's tiny farmers. And as you know, I've learned we really have a lot in common with creatures of Mother Earth. So they have individual personalities. Some of them are a little bit, you know, more aggressive, others are less aggressive, and all these things kind of balance out. I could go into details about the science behind that and all of that, but I really think what it taught me more than anything is how very much we are similar, we're connected. And I'm just going to share a couple of quick little stories with you that I think really hit that home for me. And so spending time out in the prairie, studying the yellow-bellied marmot in southern Alberta, hours and hours, you know, looking through binoculars and watching them and making my little observations. But when I first arrived in the first year of my studies, I found that they kind of were afraid of me. And, you know, I mean, what was this big, funny looking marmot every day showing up in the field, essentially? But I did find that, you know, over time, what we would call in science is they habituated to me. I'd like to think it was more like almost a form of trust. They welcomed me into their world. And through that, I was able to learn, gain insight into things that I decided to set aside any preconceived ideas that I had prior to that time, and I just let them teach me. And so if I can share just even one morning where I was out, I would park my car sometimes along a road, which was next to the marmot colony, and I was sitting there watching, and I saw all of a sudden everybody started alarm calling. Marmots will alarm call to tell each other that there's a be afraid, be very afraid. And so all of a sudden a little juvenile, a little marmot pup came running across to where I was and just went right under my feet and just waited there. And I'm scanning and looking around, and sure enough, there was a coyote walking across, so it was really interesting because I thought, wow, is that ever strange? They sort of, allowed me to be part of their little world. And I can tell of another time too, and this is the one that I get a lot of humor out of this one, but another time, or actually more than once, I'd be sitting watching the marmots, and again, this alarm calling would happen. And so, usually there'd be a few that would run down below into their burrows right away, and then there'd be one or two of the more altruistic ones that would be standing there just kind of still beaking away, alarm calling. And honestly, I'm not kidding, but it felt like they were looking across at me and saying like, hey, stupid, like, don't you see this predator? And I'd be looking and looking, and in a couple occasions I wouldn't see anything, and I'm thinking, what is going on here? And honestly, it was as though somehow they conferred to me, look up, stupid. And I'd look up and there'd be a hawk flying above. So, I think really it comes back to this thing about when you spend time in nature, you really start to love it and understand it. So You know, I would say that these are things that are really important, but I want to also say that when these relationships get disrupted, whether the natural causes are human activity, the entire system will feel the effect. And I do like to sort of refer to our time as people who were very much involved in hunting buffalo for our life, for our livelihood, and First Nations as well. And you know, during the 19th century, that was everything to us. And you know, it may have started out with commerce, and when our ancestors of the fur trade, you know, first the beavers and then the buffalo when they came here. You know, I think we all had good intentions and it was a way to make a living. But, you know, as they started to disappear, you know, people would sort of say the buffalo are disappearing. And then with that also went us as people, we started to starve. And I think that we need to sort of remember the lessons of that. And that is that sometimes when we think something is just completely limitless and abundant, and we forget to pay attention to what is happening around us, then things like overhunting. This was a keystone species that literally caused the crash of many other species. And as soon as that balance was out, then the predators went up and all sorts of, you know, things started to happen. There wasn't dispersal of seeds anymore. There wasn't that tilling of the land in the same way. So I think we really have to keep that in mind as Métis people. That, and I always kind of refer to this. Some of you probably saw the movie Spider-Man, where the uncle says, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think that was actually a quote from the philosopher Voltaire. But I like to say with us Métis, as we are gaining our rights back, which is we rightly have, I think that we need to remember with right comes great responsibility. So in speaking to Parks Canada staff here today, and working with Métis people, I think this really offers an opportunity to blend our knowledge with scientific conservation efforts. You know, we do have, many of us have deep-rooted skills in spending time in the outdoors. We're good trackers, we're good observers. You know, we have a history of being people. So I would argue that maybe we need to be utilized more. And I love these partnerships. With respect to these traditional practices, we must also at the same time keep in mind that we're living in a whole different context than we did 150 to 200 years ago. And so with that, we have to be very mindful of what is happening. And, you know, when I think about Alberta, for example, the horrible forest fires that we've been experiencing, for example, what happened in Jasper. And, you know, our Métis people used to live in Jasper before it became a national park. And one of the things that we used to do a lot of was collecting firewood, which helped to keep that fire load down. And so I think, you know, we've certainly learned you can't just go randomly collect firewood without thinking about the little animals that might be using that for a nesting site or the mosses that might grow in it. But if we learn very well and sort of use our combined knowledge to be able to be good stewards, then I think that things like that could be a way to engage. But I want to say too that this, going back to the experience of being a Conservation Corps member, I would just love to see Parks Canada implement youth programs for Métis and other Indigenous people, because I really think that these are really great opportunities to reconnect or connect and open up our hearts to our mother, to you know, to really inspire us to do the work that will get us into the positions also that will allow us to contribute more and more and more, and sharing this knowledge and not letting that knowledge be lost either. So, I mean, you know, I think there's lots to learn about sustainable practices. And so, yeah, I think Parks Canada partnerships are a beautiful way to start that. So that's about what I have to say.
That's lovely. Thanks so much. And I really just appreciate, you know, the just sit, watch, and listen, you know, and the world around us, like you're saying, the Mother Nature around us, the Mother Earth, the animal, they can adapt, and we just need to learn and take them time to learn and listen and watch. And that's the same, you know, if we're developing policy, that's the same if we're developing partnership. Just sit, learn, listen, and, you know, we can find ways to be able to do things better if we just take the time to do them. So thanks so much for that, Bernadine. Over to you, Steve. Can you tell us a bit more about what it means to be a captain of the hunt, and what can these historical governance structures teach us about the ways we care for the land and water?
Sure. Yeah, like I said in my introduction, I'm a captain of the hunt for Region 4 of the Métis Nation of Ontario, and that position is an appointment. It's not an elected position, which I think is very important to keep that politics out of our position of taking care of the land and managing the harvest. Brief history on Captain of the Hunt. It started out west in the western provinces a long time ago with the buffalo hunt, and how important the buffalo were to our people out there, and how the whole community would go on the hunt. They would pack up and they'd go wherever the buffalo were, and they would harvest the buffalo. And they decided that they needed somebody to oversee the harvesting. And they came up with a set of rules for that actual hunt. And it's very serious, because if everybody didn't follow the rule and they weren't successful in their hunt, they would perish. You know, they wouldn't have the food to eat, wouldn't have the hides to use for their homes, for their clothing. So they had to have a captain of the hunt. And if the rules were broken, I mean, there was different punishments, including having your clothes ripped up or burnt, or to the point of being flogged if it was serious enough. And that's how important it was to keep everybody together as a community to harvest the buffalo and stay alive and do that every year. So that's where the captain of the hunt position came. Gabriel Dumont, who's one of a famous Métis, he stood up for the Métis people back during the war there with Louis Riel. And Gabriel Dumont was a captain of the hunt, and he's also a very spiritual man. He carried a pipe as well. So in Ontario, we had buffalo, I guess, a long time ago, but presently there are no buffalo, but we still have a harvest of moose, deer, and many other forms of our relations here in Ontario. So I was appointed a captain hunt 7 years ago, and a lot of duties go with that position. I oversee the harvesting in our region, our communities. I sign harvesting applications for harvest cards. And all that came out of the Pali decision, Supreme Court of Canada decision in 2003, in which the Supreme Court of Canada said the Métis people have the right to harvest in Canada. And I want to say right now that our rights never came from the Supreme Court of Canada. It didn't come from the Crown. And where I believe our rights come from as a people out of the land, it came from Creator. It came from Mother Earth. It came from our ancestors. So that decision affirmed our rights, didn't give us our rights. So since the Pali case, we originally had 1,250 harvest cards that we gave out in Ontario. The cap has been lifted on that. So I help process those applications. I belong to the Regional Consultation Committee for our region, and I sit on that as a non-voting member. But I'm there to ensure that we always remember our harvesting and the land. And I stand up for the rights for our people, and I make sure they're able to exercise their rights. I have a liaison position with the Ministry of Natural Resources with their enforcement branch to ensure our people are treated well and respected, that their rights are respected. And 4 years ago, we sat down with the Ministry of Natural Resources in Ontario, and we came up with a program called Restorative Justice. And we put that into implementation, or we implemented it into our community here in Region 4. And we call it a circle. So what restorative justice is, and what it means to me, is that's restoring to us the ability to manage our own harvest, our own resources of the land around here, and how we harvest. So we set up a circle. We have 7 of our harvesters in our region who sit on that restorative justice circle. So what happens is, if the MNR, Ministry of Natural Resources Enforcement, are investigating one of our harvesters, they will be given the option as to whether going to the Crown system, go to court, or they can come into our restorative justice circle. Our rights are not an individual right, it's a communal right. It's the rights of our community. So if something happens and one of our harvesters does something, it could hurt our community. We bring them into our circle if they choose that way. And our circle has 7 people in it. I chair that, and our PCMNO rep, provincial rep, provisional rep, we sit down as chairs. But our circle can give out I'll call it a consequence for their actions, but whatever thing that those consequences will be to give back to our community, whether it's giving moose meat to an elder, giving firewood to an elder, doing some sort of work in our community. And so far we've had 4 circles of our harvesters coming in. Every one of them came in a little bit nervous when they came in, but when they left, they left in a really good way. And what restorative justice does is brings them back into our community, gets them involved in our community. Because sometimes our people are disconnected from our community or have never been connected to the community. So restorative justice is a great program we have running here. It's very successful. The Ministry of Natural Resources helped us to set it up, but we did it in a way that's right for our community, what works for our community, because every community in the Métis Nation is so different. So that's a program we've had running as Captain Hunt. I really enjoy it. I think it's been very successful. I was talking about a communal right. Every fall we have what's called a community hunt, and we go out and we harvest, and we harvest moose. So if we're successful, which we have been for the last 2 years, 3 years, that meat goes into our community freezer. It's not for us. And so we give out that meat to our community, to our elders, people in need, people who can't harvest anymore. And a lot of our people don't have enough money. It's very expensive to go harvesting. So we do that, and we just did it 2 weeks ago. We gave out all the meat to our community. And they were very, very appreciative of this, but it's what we're all about. Is that community part is very, very important. So that's a big part of being Captain of the Hunt. After the Pally decision, we had in 2018, the Métis Nation of Ontario had a harvesting agreement with the Ministry of Natural Resources, in which it was an agreement that our people would be able to harvest without being any enforcement action that was based on our rights. As well, we have a harvesting policy in the Métis Nation of Ontario, and it's a very well-written, very good harvesting policy. And the emphasis of our policy is conservation. We don't want our people taking too much of any species, take what we need, give back to the community, and to be very, very respectful of those that inhabit Mother Earth. So our policy is a great policy, and our people do follow it very well. I'm also a member of the Great Lakes Advisory Group, and that's a group in the Métis Nation of Ontario. And we are, I guess you could say, we're protectors of the water. It's all about the water in the Great Lakes, and we meet bi-weekly to discuss issues about the water, how we're going to protect the water and keep the water healthy. As the old saying is, water is life. It's so important. The water is so important. My one elder said to me, whenever you pray, Stephen, or whenever you talk, always mention the water. So I'm going to mention the water right now. We have to take care of the water. Traditionally, the water was the responsibility of our women, but now in this day and age, with things going on, that we have to all work together to keep that water healthy and to heal the water, because the water, the fish species is a big part of Métis people. Is that harvesting of fish, and right now we're limited the amount of fish we can. Pollutions, etc., in the water. So as part of that group, we're trying to get Mother Earth and the water to heal. We all come from creation. We're all part of creation. So we have to respect everything in creation, every inhabitant of Mother Earth. In Ojibwe, we call Mother Earth Skok Makwe. So we have to be respectful of those on Mother Earth. And harvesting, and we were just up in Calgary on a land user gathering, and one of the elders talked about the sacredness of harvesting, the sacredness of Mother Earth, that connection we have to Mother Earth. We are people of the land. So it's very, very important to remember that it's a sacred, it's spiritual, what we do in harvesting. And we believe, that a moose, a deer, any sort of animal, fish, bird, etc., they give us their lives. They'll turn sideways sometimes when we're harvesting, and they give us our lives so we can have that sustenance, for our people, for us to eat. So we have to respect that animal, that bird, that fish that gives us our life. And my teachings is the use of tobacco. I make an offering of tobacco when I harvest, and I totally respect that animal. We try to use as much of it as we can, and it's a very sacred thing, harvesting, to us as an Indigenous people. It's our connection to Mother Earth. And as it was said earlier, it's very well said that we have rights, but with those rights comes responsibility. So our responsibility is to be respectful to what we harvest from Mother Earth, and also ensure that there is a harvest for our future generations. all the young, new ones to come in the next number of generations. But we also, as Indigenous people, we have to thank our ancestors, because without them, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have these teachings that's been passed on. So that's very important. Harvesting includes not just harvesting of game, fish, also picking of the medicines. That's part of our harvest agreement. Picking of berries, the use of firewood, harvesting of firewood for warmth. And so that's it. Real quickly, I could talk for hours probably, but that's quickly the responsibilities of the captain of the hunt, overseeing that harvest for our region, as well as our responsibility and respect for Mother Earth, Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And really, honestly, thank you for all the work you do as being a captain of the hunt and taking that stewardship role with such grace and doing it in such a good way. And I just want to pick up on what you talked about, trying to reconnect people, and that kind of leads into my next question from grandmother Kathy, because we can talk about, it's so important to reconnect to land and the water and to have that relationship. But there's many Métis people that live in urban settings that, or folks that might not have ability to access land, water. And so that really, I really commend you for the work you're doing to reconnect people, bring people back out to the land, because it's so important, but also recognizing that not everyone has that opportunity. And so I guess my question for you, grandmother Kathy, is, for the last several years, Parks Canada has been working on a national urban park program, which is really important work. And from your perspective, can you tell us why access to nearby nature is important to Métis people who live in urban areas, and what that means to you?
Okay, first of all, my apologies for lighting a cigarette on camera. I never do that. That's part of a bimbo syndrome I was having, I guess. But and my heartfelt thank you, Steve, for the work that you do in teaching our youth. That's a really, really difficult thing. And I'll use an example. In Manitoba in 2022, there were over 9,000 children in care. Out of those 9,000 children, over 90% were Indigenous children. Those children in care never get the opportunity to learn about the love of the land and their connection that they should have or do have, but don't know how to utilize it. I am a survivor, and my siblings as well, from the Scoop, survivors from the Scoop of the 60s. And when I turned 18, I kidnapped my two younger brothers. And our life for a little while was hitchhiking around and visiting people in relatives where we could stay until I could get a job and look after them, right? And this one time we were hitchhiking from Grand Prairie to Edmonton, and one of my brothers had picked me some flowers. And then when we got to the highway and we were hitchhiking, I knew these flowers were going to die, and there was a steep embankment going down to some water. And I asked my brothers to please go put those flowers in that water. But at that young age and being separated from my family, there was a connection. There was a connection that was there inside of us that we're born with. And I think that we have to do more for these children that are in care, for these children that don't have relatives that can show them, for these children whose parents are no longer with us or grandparents are no longer with us, for our teachings come from our grandmothers and our grandfathers. And when Métis children, I believe it was around 1951, was when the act was changed and the provinces were giving jurisdiction over taking children, and there was no Indigenous child that was safe. But the Métis children, we had nobody to look after us. We had nobody to protect us. We weren't even recognized until 1982. So many times those teachings were gone. Some never ever got them back. And I consider myself blessed, for as a young child, I was not apprehended until I was about 8 years old. And I had teachings. I was born into a family of hunters and trappers and healers. My granny had made, when you talk about Western medicines and the combination of our Métis healings, my grandmother had made a tooth anesthetic from a skunk sack, which she was known for. And she also delivered many babies, which were some of them her grandchildren. But all those things that we should have learned as children when we were in care, we never got to learn those things. It is really difficult to go through life because when you get to go home, you're not just going home to, oh, great, we're home now, everything's going to be fine. No, you are going back to not only are you traumatized, but so is your family. And we need to be considerate, and we need to take these children and that do not have these opportunities to learn what we learn, what we should learn, which many of us missed out on. Am I making any sense? Am I rambling?
No, that makes good sense, Kathy, for sure. And keep going. You're doing
You know,
great.
and when people like Steve goes into these schools and you know, he might not know that one of the children that he's speaking to has never had those teachings, but that child will carry those teachings, whether you know it or not. But I think we need to pay more attention to our children in care, that we need to bring them forward into the future with us. And that's all. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a great job. And I want to say, you know, I hope you never feel like you have to apologize, like you're lighting tobacco, and there's a reason for that. And I think that's, you know, these conversations can be heavy. And for whatever reason, that needed to happen at that time. And don't ever feel like you have to apologize. And I think it's a good reminder, like these conversations are complex. You know, it's not just about a program with parks and protecting land and it's not about just, it's easy to say, oh yeah, let's heal our relationship with land and waters. It's easy to say that, but there's a lot of other complexities. There's a lot of history here. There's a lot of, you know, things that, you know, single moms are struggling to put food on the table, let alone try and get their kids out in the land, you know, especially if they live in an apartment downtown Edmonton. It's easy to say so many things. And it's another thing to be able to find and access and find the people to be able to guide those processes and guide that relationship, like Steve was talking about, like Bernadine was talking about. So these are complex discussions, you know, and this is why we have these kitchen table talks, is to be able to talk about, you know, these complex discussions. And you know, like we're so grateful with Parks Canada because we've been talking about urban park systems from the Métis National Council for a long time, because we need, so many Métis people are living in urban parks, so many young people are moving to moving to urban settings and don't have access to a national park, you know, and some of them being very remote, you know, or don't have access to spaces where they can hunt and gather and spend time with the medicine. So like the urban park systems, a program within Parks Canada, we're really excited about and being able to partner with at the national level, because there is a need, you know, and like you're saying, like there's multiple layers here. And, you know, talking about getting kids in care who need to go out and maybe play in the water and on the land and play and pick berries, like that's so critical. And how do we get more kids in care, more, you know, folks with, you know, mobility issues out on the land, and to be able to feel it and to be able to connect to it in a spiritual, emotional, physical way. So I think you did answer the question in a really good way, Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have about 6 minutes left, and I would just really like to open it up to our Parks Canada friends around the table here to any questions that you might have. And please put them in the chat, and I'd happy ask our incredible panelists here today. And maybe while you're doing that, you know, we did receive one question for the panelists, which is really exciting. And hopefully this starts off the ball rolling for our other guests here today to ask a question. But the question is, in the spirit of Valentine's Day, I would love to hear any of our panelists describe an experience where they were out on the land and they felt overwhelmed with love. I think that's such a beautiful question. So, Grandmother Kathy, maybe I'll start back with you and I'll go to Steve and then Bernadine.
Maybe we should start with Steve, so I can just think a minute.
Sure, yeah. This is an open table. We can go around it in any way you guys want. So Steve, do you have anything in particular a memory of love on the land?
That's a great question. Thank you for that question. Absolutely. But it's not any particular moment, time. It's always, whenever I'm on the land, on Mother Earth, or I'm out in the water, if I'm harvesting, or if I'm just picking berries, or I'm just out there doing ceremony, smoking my pipe, I feel that love of Mother Earth, Scott McQuay, we call her. I feel that love of Creator. I feel that love, that connection. And it's, yeah, it becomes very overwhelming. I've been harvesting and actually started crying because of the power of that love that we feel from Mother Earth and all of her inhabitants. That connection. No, that's a super question. And yeah, every time I go out, I do feel that love, and I have that love of Mother Earth and her inhabitants and everyone. Miigwech.
Thank you, Steve. Bernadine?
Sure. I concur with Steve. It's not, I can't, pinpointing one particular time is kind of difficult. I will say that in my own personal journey, my father, both of my grandparents were Métis people from Saskatchewan, and really we were part of the people that do represent a diaspora. And I have to say there was generational trauma that we experienced, and my family also moved around a lot. So, you know, to relay that point, by the time I was finished high school, our family had moved 18 times. But the one thing that was constant in my life as a child growing up was Dad taking us out fishing and camping. And I mean, by the time I was 5 years old, I knew how to build a fire, and we didn't own a tent. We slept often under a lean-to. We had one of those big 5-star wood sleeping bags, and honestly there were times we woke up with frost on it. But I can tell you that maybe it's because it was kind of complex. My mother was a white farm-raised girl from Saskatchewan, with kind of a United Church Protestant background, and Dad, like many Métis, had experience with the Catholic Church. In our case, in their case, there was a lot of poverty, and even some of the kids ended up in orphanages, in residential orphanages. And so there was this sort of Catholic influence, but Dad sort of rejected that. He always sort of said he ran away from school, and so as kids, we're not really raised, I would say, with any kind of European religion. But I would honestly say that my church is nature and always has been, and Mother Earth has always been, and Creator have been my God. And my father instilled that in me from a very early time. And so it's where I gain peace. It's where I feel peace. And I think that's even why it felt so important for me to try to grow this little tiny forest, because, honestly, when the wild roses are in bloom all around the deck, and the Waterton mock orange is in bloom, and all the little plants are coming up, and the shade is coming, I can go out in the back, and then the birds come to visit, and I can hear, and I just feel like, it grounds me and it gives me peace. And I think that it does for most people. And I think, again, that brings me back to this idea that we're all connected, because we are, after all, other animals. We're just the human animal. And so, being connected to to the plants, the animals, all the four-footed, the flying, the fish, everybody, and the water, as you said, because we're mostly water. Really, that is a spiritual connection. And I think nature makes us feel connected. It also makes us feel human. And it is in itself like a bird song. You can't describe it. It's love. It's pure love. And it's ineffable love. And so that's really, I guess, all I can say is it happens quite frequently. So, yeah.
That's really beautiful, Bernadine. Really, truly. Thank you. And for Grandmother Kathy, I'm going to let you think on that question. And I have one more. I know we're like counting down. It's like the clock is coming down, but I do want to answer this question. Maybe you can do 2 questions in one, Grandmother Kathy. And that is, are there any particular spaces or species, plants or animals, that help you feel more connected to the land than any other?
Yes, my dogs and my cats and my lizard, who she journeyed to the spirit world. But I think when you have pets, it is a connection, because they all come from, Mother Earth, and the animals that we have are rescues. So they came with a lot of issues. And like when I have a meeting, though, one has to stay with me or she'll go ballistic. And we tried to train her, but we just leave her the way that she is, because she's beautiful the way that she is, right? And I think that is a connection, because I'll just share with you briefly this story. Before I was taken into care at a young age, our family, you know, you would start, I'm sure Steve knows this and anybody else, is that at a young age, you were taught to see what you know. Like, can you be a trapper? Can you be a hunter? Are you a berry picker? Are you, you know, a healer? And the first thing, you know, my uncle had taken me out and on a dog sled, and I would not pick up the dead animals. I could not. And what I remember from that whole experience with my uncle was the smell of blood. And the second time he took me out with my cousin, who was actually did turn out to be a pretty good hunter and trapper, but I was not that person. The third time my auntie took me out, but it was walking this time, and it was early, early, early in the morning, like really early. And there were 3 rabbits. The third one was still alive, and I lost it. And I started yelling and screaming to, you know, let it go, fix it, whatever. And of course, she had to do what she had to do. And I remember she had them in this long canvas bag. And as we're walking back to camp, I was crying, and she took those 3 rabbits out and she laid them on the ground. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I cannot skin those. I cannot do that. Like, that was the thought. And I was kind of backing away. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm leaving them for the coyotes. They need to eat too. And off we went back. And she told me that she touched my heart and she said, you're soft like your mom and like your grandmother, and the world needs soft people, because that's how we all connect, is through your softness. So that's, you know, my story of how I feel our connection is, you know, is we all have different ways that we connect with Mother Earth. Some of us provide the food, some of us provide the spiritual part, some of us, you know, provide the educational part, and we all have to accept our gifts, our roles. They're gifts, you know, that we are given to be able to do that. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I think that's such a beautiful way to end our kitchen table talk today. Thank you to all of you for really sharing from a really beautiful place and sharing with our Parks Canada friends. Thanks to Parks Canada for your partnership, for your allyship and advancing the needs of the Métis Nation. I'm going to leave it there, but I'm going to ask Grandmother Kathy to close us in a good way today. And thank you for the opening prayer. And again, thank you all of you for being here and for sharing with us today. It's really been a beautiful way to celebrate Valentine's Day. So thank you. So Grandmother Kathy, I leave it to you to close us in a good way.
Okay, thank you. I just want to ask Steve one thing.
Yeah.
Did you open my present?
No, it stayed at Burr later and it's gone back. So no, I did not.
I'm sorry, I did. But I took it back. I just seen when I seen you never took it back. I just had to share that.
I'll wait for the surprise.
Okay. Okay, let's Sacred Grandmothers from all directions, we offer you prayers today with love, respect, and hope. We thank Mother Earth for her daily gifts, and we pray for the healing of our Mother Earth. We are grateful for our families, our friends, and the people we work with. Let us give thanks for the animal friends we share our homes with and our air, land, and water friends. Sacred Grandmothers, we thank you for your wisdom and your guidance today. As today's discussion comes to an end, let us be grateful for the information that was shared and the relationships that were formed today. Let us continue to stay strong for each other and with each other as we continue this journey to bring health, happiness, and healing to Mother Earth and all our natural family. May your days be full of many blessings, and please take a moment from your busy day to offer words of kindness to someone. Your kind words can help a person who may be struggling. And please be kind and gentle to yourself. Stay safe, stay healthy. In the spirit of our sacred grandmothers, Hi, Marcy, Miigwech, thank you for listening to our words today.
Marcy.
Thank you all, and we'll see you soon, Erin and Steve. And hopefully we shall meet with everybody else one day.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.
Miigwech,